Tonight we'll be talking with an author of a fictional book, which actually isn't all that fiction. It's based on some real-life events, and some of her predictions, she says, may actually come true. We'll be talking with her. And also I'll be talking about the general apathy in society, which really bugs me. We'll be talking about that in just a couple minutes. Feedback starts now. Good evening and welcome to Feedback. As I said, coming up later in the show, we're going to be talking with Margot Dockendorf. She's the author of a book called The Mahdi, a Millennium Thriller. It's a fictional book, but it sort of foreshadows what may happen. It looks to be a pretty interesting book. We'll be talking with her for most of the show. But in this first segment, as I always do, I want to talk to you about something that I've seen in the news that's bothered me. It's actually basically the news that's bothering me and people's interpretation of the news that's bothering me. It seems that, I talk to people all the time, and you talk about anything going on in the world. What are you talking about? I don't understand that. I don't know what you're talking about. If you don't talk to them about something so centrally located, like within 5 miles around them, they don't know about it. I was talking to someone the other day, something I believe was about China, and something very, very just casually mentioned something, and they totally lost me in the conversation because they didn't know what I was talking about. I talked to someone, I believe, studying French, and I said something about what was going on in France. They didn't know what I was talking about. Well, I used to think it only extended internationally because generally Americans do have this sort of I don't care attitude about anything going on outside of our United States borders. Well, then of course I was discouraged even more. A few weeks ago there was a study that came out, and the headline in the paper read, "Teens lack civic knowledge." We knew that. The subheadline, "Tests show 1/3 of seniors don't even know the basics." High school seniors. That scares me, actually. They talked about 4th graders not knowing a lot of information, and 8th graders as well. But the things for the seniors, that 1/3 of seniors knew this information, was that who had more control over foreign policy? The President and the State Department, or Congress and the courts? They didn't know that the President and the State Department obviously have more power over foreign policy. 36% knew that the Supreme Court used the 14th Amendment to invalidate states' laws that segregate public schools. And only 9% could list 2 ways democratic society benefits from active participation of its citizens. Now, this leads me back to a point I've talked about before. I talked about it with the commissioners a few weeks ago, saying that people aren't going out and voting. Well, obviously, if there's only a 50% turnout at election time, why is that? Well, the representative democracy obviously is not being used. And this shows it because people can't even tell 2 positive things about the democratic society. One obviously being that you have the vote. People I've talked to don't know who their congressman is, who their senator is, who the senators from their state are. And people always criticize, and I just think, how do you have room to criticize if you don't even know what's going on in the world around you? I'm not saying that you should know everything there is to know, but try to pay attention more and don't think just because it's happening across the Pacific Ocean, it doesn't matter to you. So, just wanted to get that out of the way. Start paying attention more. But I know you're intelligent if you're watching this show, so you're paying attention, honestly. But we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to be speaking with Margot Dockendorf about The Mahdi, a Millennium Thriller. When we come back after this.
In the early years, young children cannot stand on their own. Uniting parents and children is an important part of the life of a community. Stand for Children encourages people to make a personal commitment to stand for the health of children. 300,000 Americans marched in Washington, D.C. last June to support Stand for Children Day. Stand for Children seeks to lift the belief that children need our help to stand.
It's my birthday. I'm the mayor. It's my birthday.
Exercised lately?
Go for a mouthful, go for the fun.
Oh, go for cake.
Cakes for everyone. Just one stack is what it takes. And it's go for cakes. Open wide, stuff your face. There's always room for more gopher cakes. Empty the box, then reload. Eat those gopher cakes till you explode.
Exercised lately?
Till you explode.
Sad, looking back now, the things you go through in life. Scary. The worst thing about being on welfare was I couldn't get my kids what they really wanted. I had to get a better life for my girls and myself. I got off welfare. I got a good job. Makes me the happiest mother in the world. I live for my girls.
We're not asking you to hire everyone on welfare, just one.
And welcome back. We are now going to be speaking with Margot Dockendorf over the phone. She's the author of The Mahdi, a millennium thriller. And Margot, thank you for joining us this evening. First, let's start off with, give us a brief synopsis of the content of your book.
Okay, The Mahdi is a book about the world in which we live in today. It's the story of the rise of a charismatic spiritual teacher, if you will, in sort of a Buddha, Jesus, Mohammed, and maybe some Mahatma Gandhi thrown in there, who has a message of empowerment to the world and about unity and solidarity, and he rises to become the leader of the third world with his base of power in the Middle East. It was inspired by three predictions by Nostradamus that there would be three antichrists, and the first Napoleon, the second Hitler, and the third is someone who would sit in the Middle East and wear a blue turban, and that's all Nostradamus said. And I wove this whole story around that prediction. And it's basically after Abu Ali Asghar, the Mahdi, rises to power, his message is for humanity to get its global house in order. And if humanity does not choose to do it, then he will unleash the beast within. And unleash the mightiest military machine that has ever been created, that he has assembled, and to create World War III.
You mentioned the Middle East. Also, just reading some of the plot summaries, I've seen Islam also mentioned. Why have you chosen Islam in the Middle East as a platform for the book?
Well, Abu is only half Muslim, Arab Muslim. He's also Indian Sikh. And his message, however, raised as a Muslim by his devout father in the island of Sri Lanka, his message is about unity and justice and equality, and it has very much resonates with Muslims around the world, which Islam is very much a religion based upon those principles. And with 1 billion Muslims in the world, he develops quite a following. I use that because Islam is perhaps one of the most revolutionary religions on the planet, and it's the religion that is perhaps most on the ascendancy in the world today. And it becomes a natural platform for Abu to deliver his message, and he basically gets the greatest following from Muslims around the world.
Okay, why did you even choose to write this book? Are you with us? All right. Having some technical problems with Margot on the phone. I believe we have her now. Let's go to her on the phone.
I wanted to provide an opportunity. The book is a mirror to the world we're in, and actually it's kind of a wake-up call. It's an opportunity for the reader to read the novel, to look at the world as it exists, and many of the events highlighted in the book, portrayed in the book, and many of the characters are very recognizable as characters on the world stage today. An opportunity for people to read that and to see the kind of world that we've created for ourselves, where we're going, and perhaps to get people to realize the need for change in the world.
Okay, you're saying that some characters in the book are recognizable to characters, or not characters, people in the world today. Maybe some examples of that.
Well, there's a character, for example, in Libya that Abu goes to meet that I think people will easily recognize, also in Egypt and many heads of state around the world, as well as even in our own country.
Okay. How much time, thought, and research have you put into this book? Obviously, it's a pretty big project. So how much went into the actual creation of the book?
The Mahdi took me about 10 years to write, and a lot of that was because of the thorough and meticulous research that was required, and that was important because not only did I have to thoroughly research different belief systems, spiritual belief systems like Hinduism and Buddhism, as well as Islam, but also all of the geographic locations where Abu and the other main character, H. Bennett Williams, a New York Times correspondent, travel to around the world. And they go from India to Bangladesh to Myanmar through Indonesia and Africa. And each one of those places I had to make sure that it was authentic and as accurate as possible, because it was very important that the reader feels as though they're actually there in those locations, and they're seeing it. The reader is seeing those locations as Bennett Williams is experiencing them. And the purpose of that is because Abu is trying to show Bennett Williams the world.
Well, what did you take away from the book? You know, it seems like so much education for the reader. What did you take away from the book?
Well, I think I took away from the sense that, I guess, a profound sense of the diversity within the world, and how that diversity is really our strength, and that the power of the human being, any human being, to change the world. And I'm mindful of what Margaret Mead said when she said, never underestimate the ability of a small group of dedicated people to change the world. Indeed, it's all that ever has. And that's really what the book is about. It's about change and the ability of the human beings to adapt and to change and to grow.
That's interesting you say adapt and grow and change. The millennium, I mean the change of from 1999 to 2000, we hear a lot about changing and renewing at the millennium. Maybe what lessons or what can people learn from your book as maybe a millennium lesson?
Well, I actually tried to get this out there in time for the millennium, because there is reference made to the fact that within the Mahdi about the changes that are occurring as this new millennium approaches. And the millennium, well, I don't think the year 2000 per se has any real significance in terms of portending any great change itself. I think that what it does is in the minds of many people, and that cannot be underestimated, is it's bringing this time period into focus. I mean, we're all hearing so much about the millennium and Y2K, and our expectations are up there. And if you think about how at the end of every year we get these combined feelings of nostalgia for what has come before, with this going into the future and what the new year might hold, and there's a sense of excitement and even perhaps an underlying maybe anxiety about it. Now that is compounded, certainly every century, and you can imagine every 1,000 years. Now, the last time this ever happened was obviously in the year 999, and there were few people around that could read, much less write. And so it gives us an opportunity to really focus. And I think the millennium represents what I like to refer to as a time for reckoning, and reckoning in the sense that it means a time to take stock of ourselves, to do perhaps some kind of an inventory, but more importantly to take our bearings and to figure out where we are, where we've been, and most importantly, where we're going to go in the future. And the Mahdi, again, I wrote it as a wake-up call because I think it's a very plausible scenario as to what happens and the tremendous upheaval and chaos that's unleashed by Abu into the world. And I think it's something that isn't necessarily going to happen, but it very well could happen. and if we don't start to gain some awareness of what's happening in the world and take steps to change.
Another thing we've been hearing about a lot, obviously, in this day and age is religion, lack thereof, actually. I hear a lot about religion. Maybe, what are your thoughts since all the research? Is there a lack of religion in the world?
Well, I don't think there's necessarily a lack of religion. That perhaps you could make the argument that there's a lack of true spirituality in the world. But I don't think that religion is per se on the decline. I think that people are turning much more to religion and in some areas spirituality as well. And I draw the distinction because I think that religion is more based upon a set of beliefs, specific beliefs and adherence to beliefs, rituals, and perhaps even some dogma that surrounds religions. Now, that's not to say that at the heart of every religion there isn't this central truth involving spirituality. Quite the contrary. All the great religions descend from, I think, one central truth. And I personally believe that in order to really gain some sense of really what that ultimate truth is, and explains our relationship to one another and our relationship to the universe and to God and such, I think that you almost have to take all of the religions and boil them down to that central truth to even get some kind of an approximation of the divine. Now, and I think that spirituality, as I define it, is, to me, at its most fundamental, is a growing awareness of the connection of all living things and all human beings in relationship to one another. And I think in order to really become a spiritual person, you have to embrace the fact that we are all one and that we are all connected in some capacity.
Okay, Ms. Dockendorf, we're going to be talking with you, but what we're going to do right now is we are going to take a break. We're going to be right back with more with Margot Dockendorf, the author of The Mahdi, a Millennium Thriller.
Introducing new frequent phone hours.
Use the phone just 8 hours a week and get this free phone cradle. Use it 12 hours and get a speakerphone.
Use it 15 hours and get this cool headset.
Or stay on the phone 20 hours a week
And get a pasty complexion.
flabby body, and a great new nickname at school.
Exercised lately?
All my friends are there. I want my mother to be there. My hair's gonna be done so beautiful. A lot of music, a nice blue dress. I want to be beautiful for every single person that goes there. If I get shot, I want to have a nice funeral.
Every day, 10 children are killed by gunfire. Help stop the violence. Call 1-800-WE-PREVENT for free information. Not one more lost life. Not one more grieving family. Not one more.
It's not just about making plans. It's about making a difference and taking an interest, not just earning it. At Edward Jones, it's about more than investing. It's about knowing you.
My every hope, my life, my world, it all begins with a dream.
Edward Jones, investing in you and your dreams.
In Clarion, see Gary Martin, located on Main Street. Phone 226-7896.
And we're back tonight on Feedback, speaking with Margot Dockendorf, the author of The Mahdi, a Millennium Thriller. Let's get right back to the interview. She's joining us live on the phone tonight. Margot, it seems that so much thought and time and energy really went into the book. Why did you take on such a monumental task?
Because I think that my own personal belief is that humanity is truly in a state of transition right now. I think that we have been existing for quite some time and almost in a state of adolescence in our existence. And it's time for humanity to grow up and to, if you look around our world and you look at what's happening in our own cities and certainly on the planet, there's a lot of the evidence of behavior that's certainly characteristic of very adolescent behavior. It's a struggle with identity, it's emotional conflicts and uncertainty about the place and purpose of things. And I think that there's a lot of acting out of behaviors that we're seeing. And when that, collectively as a race, I think that that is very true. What we need to do is we need to start growing up and move into that level of adulthood on the planet, to the point where, and what is adulthood? It's about taking responsibility. It's about being accountable, and it's about basically taking, having some greater awareness of what you're doing with your life and where you're going, and rather than just, I think, acting out on impulse and your more emotional instincts. And I also think that where we are in our transition is this spiritual awakening that is occurring as we move into this new level of awareness. And that awakening, almost by nature, there's some polarities that are occurring in the world, and you see it happening. On the one hand, you've got a growing sense of an interconnectedness on the planet, a globalization of the planet, but yet I think that is producing in some people a reaction, and I think it engenders a lot of fear, to be perfectly honest. And I think a lot of the violence and a lot of the things that are happening on the planet today are making us question and focus on certain issues. What are we doing to the environment? What are we doing to our planet? What are we doing to ourselves? And to take a look at the fact that we are, by nature, violent creatures, and that if we don't learn to tame that violence and the beast within us, we may well bring about our own self-destruction. And I think that's why I wrote the Mahdi, was to provide that perspective and to draw all the dots, to connect all the dots together, and that's hopefully what I've accomplished.
But, okay, how, if people do read this and, okay, they realize what is the potential, I mean, anarchy obviously being the potential here, how, I mean, they see this happening, but how can we make this stop on the global level? Is there any way?
Well, in the book, I spend a lot of time, and Abu is part of his message is the fact that the real power in this world has always been derived from the people, and that's where it really resides. And he talks about inverting the pyramid. What I think human beings have to do is to reclaim that power. And the way we do it is by waking up and maybe getting out of these fur-lined ruts that we all exist in, and this assumption of day-to-day reality, and to start being actively involved and participating in the world. And I think that is to start paying attention and voicing and expressing our voices and our concerns and becoming involved in the electoral process, and and we have a representative democracy in this country, and to let our politicians know how we feel and what we think. And I think there's 1,000 things that can be done on many different levels, on the individual and the larger level, to really start effectuating change.
Well, let me go ahead and play pessimist here, as I always do. I was talking about this in the beginning of the show today, about how it seems that people are so apathetic to things going on around them, and especially not using the gift we have here really in a democracy, in a representative democracy. Can this change?
That's a very good question, Mark. And, I tend to sometimes, I'm a long-term optimist and short-term pessimist in many ways. And it's an unfortunate aspect of human nature, is that we oftentimes do not change until the pain of continuing as we are becomes too evident. And that's when people decide to finally change, and oftentimes it's too late. How far or how bad does the world have to get before we actually do something about it? We are creating for ourselves, and I think there's a lot of denial. We're all existing in a state of denial about what's going on in the world. Part of that apathy is a sense of powerlessness, and that is an illusion, and I think that that's part of the lie. That's part of the lie that almost goes on inside of our minds, that tells us that we cannot effectuate change, that we cannot make an impact on the world. And I was reminded recently of something that Robert Kennedy once said, and I'll quote, and he said, "Each time a person stands up for an ideal or works to improve the lot of others, that person sends forth a ripple of hope, and crossing each other from a million different centers of energy and daring, those ripples build a current that can sweep down the mightiest walls of oppression and resistance." And I think that if people can overcome that sense of powerlessness and to realize the power that they really do have, if they wake up out of this this sleep that we've been lulled into by, ineffectual leaders in this country. It would be just a tremendous force, and every individual who chooses to do that can make a tremendous difference.
Okay, like I said to you before, I picked up on apathy before. Obviously, it's something you've picked up on. I sort of picked up on it, thought about it, complained about it, and left it be. You've picked up on it, and now you've brought it out in a book. Why did you bring it out in these lessons of the Mahdi?
That's a good question, Mark. And tell you the truth, I don't know, but I always felt a calling to write this book, and I don't know. It's just the Mahdi was a book that I felt needed to be written, and that I felt very privileged almost to be the one to be able to write it. I have always believed in, I think, just the magnificence and the potential of human beings. And what we can accomplish together as a race is just unimaginable. And one day we're actually going to get off this planet, and we will hopefully get our act together and survive this turbulent, awful period of our adolescence and grow up. But I think that that's something that I've always believed in, and I've wanted to write something that is going to be that wake-up call that's going to get people perhaps out of their apathy. And maybe if only a person reads the book and it expands their consciousness, if it changes the way that when they sit down and watch the evening news, that the way they look at the world and these events that are occurring. Because the Mahdi really, I think, succeeds in putting all of this into context so that the world becomes, all these changes and all the chaos that seem to be happening, there is a pattern to it, and it's all connected, and there's an explanation for it. And I think if we can understand that, that will help, I think, guide us in the direction we need to go.
Okay, and the question that I always ask authors is, now that the book is completed, what do you take away from it, what personally?
Oh, it has opened up a tremendous, more than I ever thought. It's opened up a great deal for me. The people I have met, and around the United States in particular, as I've traveled, who have read the book and who have come forward and talked about it, it just made me realize that there is an entire legion of people out there, a growing legion of people who have this kind of awareness, that I think through just the fact that they believe and that they think a certain way, that they're willing to kind of break free of this sense of normalcy that seems to kind of been like a great tranquilizer on us, but to look into the future, it gives me a tremendous amount of hope. And I've met a lot of people who are also very active politically and who are striving to change the world. I've become involved in an organization, the World Federalist Movement, for example, and the World Federalist Association, based in Washington, D.C. And these are people that are incredibly and extraordinarily dedicated to doing what I'm talking about, is to try to put in place some system of government for our planet that will create, be a guarantor of world peace, and to create a lot of the changes and to give us an opportunity to perhaps survive and catch our breath so that we can begin to focus outward and really realize our potential. And that's been tremendously exhilarating for me.
All right, thank you, Margot Dockendorf, for joining us. Once again, Margot is the author of The Mahdi, a Millennium Thrill. It looks to be a pretty interesting book. I'm sure you can pick it up online at fine bookstores near you. I'm sure you can find it in some crummy bookstores, too. We'll be back after this.
The crowd is easy when you stop in at Fashion Bug, located in the Clarion Mall. Whether you're looking for junior trendy, girls, or fashion for women, they have it all with many different styles. With our newly expanded shoe and accessory department, you're surely to find that special touch to enhance that new outfit. And if you have a fashion question, our experts are here to help. That's Fashion Bug, located in the Clarion Mall, just off Exit 9 of Interstate 80. Open Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. till 9 p.m. Sunday from noon till 5.
Where have all the children gone? Long time passing.
Every day, 10 children are killed by gunfire. You can help stop the violence. Call 1-800-WE-PREVENT. Not one more lost life. Not one more grieving family. Not one more.
Gone to graveyards one by one. Oh, when will we
News travels fast. That's why you need the speed and accuracy of a news team that brings coverage closer to home. Every Tuesday and Wednesday night, join TV5 News for Clarion's only live local newscast on television at 8. Tune in for the latest in regional, state, and national news. Plus, with our newspaper exchange partner, the Clarion News, teaming up to bring coverage closer to home every Tuesday and Wednesday at 8 p.m. Clarion's only live local newscast on television at 8 is here on TV5. Introducing the Italian Misa Trio from Domino's Pizza, located in the 800 Center in Clarion. Domino's Pizza offers a wide variety of pizza, wings, breadsticks, and hoagies. And for just $9.99, get a large unlimited topping pizza. Stop in or have Domino's deliver. That's Domino's Pizza, located in the 800 Center. Phone 226-4060. That's Domino's Pizza, 226-4060.
Once again, we would like to thank Margot Dockendorf, the author of the Mahdi, a Millennium Thriller, for joining us. Looks to be a really good book. As I said, get out there and buy that. And get out there and vote, even though there's no election coming up. Like I was saying in the beginning, get involved. Thanks for joining us tonight. We'll see you next time.